Our second research project involved looking at the transition process from the perspective of the CEO, and this report will be out shortly. This is, as they say, hot off the press. We conducted structured interviews with about 25 CEOs, most of whom were in positions with companies of $1 billion or more. And within 5 years of their ascension to the role, so their experiences were relatively recent. 50% of the people we interviewed described their transition as challenging, and some even said chaotic. The rest said it was smooth or relatively straightforward, but I can tell you very few said it was easy. A lot of stuff to cover. When you look at this slide, you can see where the board was heavily involved. The likelihood of the transition being described as easy went way up. As the board involvement decreased, the challenges and the chaotic nature of the transition increased as well. A clear message that the board could make a huge difference in the effectiveness of the transition. We asked the CEOs what they found to be the biggest challenges moving into the role. And the most frequently named issue was just understanding the role. What is all involved? What do I have to do? Understanding the responsibilities at a practical level. As somebody said in a meeting yesterday, nobody trains you to do this job. There are things in that position that you're just not prepared for. There are priorities coming from all different directions that you have to balance, and you have to avoid the temptation to get too involved in the details, to move away from some of those operation issues, and deal with a whole set of responsibilities that in many ways are much more ambiguous than what you're used to dealing with. Meeting stakeholder expectations was a huge challenge. A whole new set of stakeholders to deal with, trying to understand how to manage the board, managing those relationships and establishing those in a relatively short period of time. The next one was dealing with the impact of the prior CEO. You can say in many cases this turned out to be a very positive thing for many people, but in others it was a fairly sizable challenge. Some of them talked about differences in style that created some challenges in dealing with the board. One person talked about following a CEO who was very hands-off, laissez-faire, and provided a little bit of guidance. And his successor happened to be a very involved, hands-on CEO. And that was a real challenge for the board and took some time, or for the team, and took some time to work through that. Other things talked about the continued influence of the board, of the predecessor, the influence that that person had over the board and the senior team, making it much more difficult for the new CEO to establish his or her own agenda. Getting honest and candid feedback and input turned out to be a surprising kind of a challenge for a lot of people. All these people that they thought they were pretty close to, all of a sudden, agendas started popping up. And they had some difficulties trying to understand where these people were coming from, understanding the politics, understanding where they could go to get real candid feedback about particular situations, dealing with the politics. These were challenges that many of the new CEOs talked about. We asked the CEOs what they thought made the transition easy. And no surprise, the number one most often named was having an involved, engaged board. The activities they talked about that were helpful were discussions about strategy, and not board group discussions, but one-on-one discussions about strategy, trying to understand the board's perspective, what they thought were the issues, and having that shape their thinking. Sharing experiences at a personal level, understanding what the board members went through when they made their transitions into that CEO role, and helping them kind of anticipate what was coming up. Acting as a sounding board where they could test, where the new CEO could test his or her perceptions about what was going on. Am I reading this right? Am I reading this situation properly? Is this really what's going on? and getting that kind of advice from the outgoing CEO. And making expectations clear, understanding how you're being measured.